This week, let's discuss two words, precision and concision, and they rhyme. And I do that on purpose so that, a year from now, when you're writing something else in another course, you might think, oh, precision and concision, and be able to come back in touch with a few of the ideas that we'll explore this week and make whatever writing you're doing a year from now better. So, precision and concision, these both have general meanings. Let me pull up my dictionary and thesaurus that I have on my computer. And let's look at precision, the quality, condition, or fact of being exact and accurate. The deal was planned and executed with military precision. And then if you go down one more, marked by or adapted for accuracy and exactness, a precision instrument. So we have this idea of, it's kind of a metaphor of technology. We can think of our cars as having precise steering or precise, motors that make efficient use of fuel. We could think of, a metaphor I like is, what might be precision if you're taking a picture of something using a camera? Well, if you're precise with making sure that the image is in focus, right, using the lens, then you have a more precise image, right? It's in focus. The person that looks at that photograph will see more detail and it will be clearer to them what was being photographed. So the analogy would be, for the concepts that you're trying to get across in writing, does your language get precise with what you're trying to explain to your reader? Does your language get the idea into focus for the reader in the same way that a camera lens might bring the image into focus for someone looking at that photograph? Does that make sense? So, we can ask ourselves, well, how do I make my language more precise? One thing I think is interesting is to look at the thesaurus, which I'm sure everyone has used at one point or another, but it is really good to make the thesaurus your friend as you get more and more into writing or write more and more papers throughout your college career. So let's look at this word anger. What I love about a thesaurus is you can take one word, say you're writing about the emotion of anger, and then you can see all these different related words. They're different words, but they're related to a greater or lesser degree to anger. A lot of them are versions of anger, right? And they range from strong versions of anger, which might be a word like rage, to mild versions of anger, which might be a word something like annoyance. But in a sense, you can use all these words as a way to make your thought more precise. And to continue my metaphor of the photograph, to focus better on your idea. So, let me just read these words out loud. Annoyance, vexation, exasperation, crossness, irritation, irritability, indignation, pique, displeasure, resentment, rage, fury, wrath, outrage, temper, road rage. Now we're getting into very specific kinds of rage. Air rage. I don't even know what air rage is. Is that when people flying a plane get into road rage in the sky? I don't know. Irascibility, ill temper, dyspepsia, spleen, ill humor, tetchiness. There's a pretty obscure one, but kind of a fun one. Testiness, waspishness, aggravation, ire, choler, bile. So a lot of these are fairly literary and fancy words that, you're probably not going to end up using the word choler, Choler, in an essay. But so what's the lesson I'm trying to get across? I guess I'm saying, if you're writing a sentence in which you say something like, there's a lot of anger about this issue, why not just enter the word anger into a thesaurus and see if any of these words that come up have a little more precision for exactly what you're going for. And again, one of the main sort of scales that you'll find is in more intense to less intense with almost any word. So the less intense version of anger would be this idea of maybe being irritated or annoyed, or what's another word? I don't know if it's even in this list, but being miffed. If you're miffed at someone, you're a little mad, but you're not in a fury, right? So that would be taking it up to the more intense end of the scale of this concept: rage, fury, wrath. And just to drive this home, let me go over to, say, sadness. Again, look how we can look at these words as less intense to more intense versions of sadness. So something like being down, feeling a little blue. These are mild to moderate versions of sadness, right? Being glum, being in low spirits. But at the more intense end of the scale, we would get things like misery. I'm looking through these now. Despair, wretchedness. These are very intense versions of sadness, right? That are almost, they're very active compared to something like just feeling a little down or feeling a little blue. Like misery gives you this image of someone who's crying, maybe walking around the house, pacing around, and they're in true despair. They're in severe depression as opposed to mild depression. I love just looking through the thesaurus and seeing how can I kind of play with the knobs and dials of the words that I'm using to make them more precise. And so to put the word precise in another way, how do I really get it to mean what I want it to mean? That's the question. And you're always, as a writer, you're always thinking something within you, but sending it out to someone who may not even know who you are, right? So you're sending it out to another person who may be a stranger. So the words are the medium by which your idea moves from your brain to someone else's. And you can think of it as, if you do a bad job of writing, much less of your idea gets across. And if you do a good job of writing and use a lot of precision, your idea can get almost copied exactly to the other person. It's never completely exact. Language isn't perfect, right? It's never going to let someone else know exactly what you are thinking or feeling. But you can aim to get more and more precise and then give like maybe a near perfect idea of what you're trying to say to your reader. All right, let's look at the definition of concision. Somewhat more fancy word compared to precision. And when I say fancy, I just mean you don't see it as much. We also have, you might have heard the form of it, conciseness, or just something being concise. So let me read this definition. Concise, adjective, giving a lot of information clearly and in a few words. Brief but comprehensive. A concise account of the country's history. So I love this idea it's just a great idea to keep in mind whenever you're writing anything is how can I get more meaning across and also use less words to do it? Or put another way, you could say concision is using less words to mean more. And you might ask yourself, well, is that possible? Don't you get more meaning across if you use more words? Not really. Not really. I mean, if we look at something like, say, explaining how to build an automobile, yes, you're going to need a lot of words. You're going to need a book to do that. And you can't explain how to build a whole automobile in one paragraph, right? But I'm really talking more about on the level of, say, one sentence, two sentences, a paragraph. Often, by cutting down on the number of words you use, you end up giving more to your reader. You end up being more precise, as we just talked about, and you end up giving more meaning. Now, let me pull up some examples of writing that might illustrate this principle a little more. Here are two sentences, and let's just quickly see how we could take away words to make these have more meaning. The instructor will, in his role of teaching and keeping track of grades, assign grades and instruct the course, and ultimately do his best to try to teach new ways to write. What I would do with this phrase is, let's see, cut everything from this comma to here. The instructor will do his best to try to teach new ways to write. Do you see how that really has more meaning once we got rid of all that kind of needless explanation of what teaching was? And just the shortness and the conciseness of the sentence has more power and more punch now, and probably will be remembered more by a reader because it's so much shorter. Let me just go back to show you what we took away. The instructor will, in his role of teaching and keeping track of grades, assign grades and instruct the course. That's all just describing what a teacher does, right? We all know what a teacher does. They teach, they keep track of the grades in order to assign the grades, and all of that is basically instructing the course. So when we eliminate all that, boom, it's better. And then just this last example here, how would I rewrite this to make it shorter and more full of meaning? I would say, now we're going to leave. You see the difference? This only means now. And then beginning to depart, that's just the same as departing, right? You are departing. You're beginning to depart is departing, and departing is leaving. So now we're going to leave. Boom. All right.